Chapter 1. The Outcast of Valoria. Kalara's footsteps thundered through the ancient forest of Valoria, each step sending vibrations into the soft moss and sprawling roots that carpeted the planet's lush surface. The trees, colossal as the giants themselves, bowed gently with the passing of the enormous figure, their leaves shimmering with iridescent hues in the light of Valoria's twin suns. Her presence was as commanding as the towering peaks that framed the horizon, a living testament to the might and resilience of her species. Yet within the vastness of her strength lay the seeds of her exile. For all her imposing stature, Kalara was an outcast, cast aside by the very society that had birthed her. The Council of Elders, keepers of Valoria's ancient traditions and reproductive rights, had judged her unfit not for lack of power or vitality, but because she was deemed too big to reproduce, a threat to the delicate balance of their genetic lineage and the stability of their culture. Their decree had shattered her world, branding her as an anomaly, a pariah destined to wander the fringes of a civilization that feared the extraordinary. In Valorian society, size was sacrosanct. The largest were revered as progenitors, their genes carefully preserved and passed down through sacred rites designed to maintain the purity and strength of the race. This obsession with size and strength was not merely vanity, but a survival mechanism honed over millennia. Valoria was a harsh world, its landscapes dominated by towering mountains, swirling storms, and predators capable of swallowing even a full-grown giant in a single gulp. To thrive, Valorians had evolved into beings of immense physical power, and their social structures reflected this reality. The Council's decision to exclude Kalara was rooted in fear that her exceptional size could produce offspring too unwieldy, too unpredictable, threatening to destabilize the carefully balanced ecosystem of their people. The Council's voices, echoing through the marble chambers of the capital, had been unyielding. Kalara exceeds the bounds of our sacred gene pool. To allow her to bear children risks calamity. She must be denied. The weight of this pronouncement crushed Kalara's spirit like the ancient stones beneath her feet. To be denied the right to motherhood was to be denied one of the most fundamental purposes of her existence, to be severed from the very lineage that defined her identity. She had grown up dreaming of cradling her own child, teaching them the ancient ways, watching them rise to embody the strength and wisdom of Valoria. But the Council's decree rendered those dreams impossible. With a heavy heart, she left the city, retreating to the wilds beyond the borders of civilization, where towering cliffs met raging seas and the sky stretched wide and free. There, amidst the unforgiving beauty of the untamed world, Kalara carved out a solitary existence, tending to the land and her own aching soul. Yet even in exile, Kalara was not alone. The wilds of Valoria held their own mysteries and allies, creatures as ancient as the planet itself, spirits whispered of in Valorian legend. Among them were the guardians of the rift, colossal beasts of stone and flame who roamed the volcanic canyons, protectors of balance and change. It was here, amid the fire-lit nights and thunderous storms, that Kalara's fate began to shift. One evening, as she sat beneath the glow of the twin moons, a figure emerged from the shadows, a stranger whose presence seemed to ripple through the air with quiet authority and unexpected warmth. This was Narek, a scientist from a distant world who had come to Valoria seeking answers beyond the reach of his own civilization. His eyes held a spark of curiosity and compassion that had long been absent from Kalara's life. Narek saw beyond the surface, beyond the towering frame and the scars etched into her skin by years of hardship. He saw the resilience, the wisdom, and the untapped potential that the Council had feared but failed to understand. Through long conversations beneath the stars, shared knowledge of biology and technology, and moments of quiet connection, Narek offered Kalara a chance to reclaim her destiny not through defiance alone, but through innovation and hope. Together, they explored possibilities that bridged ancient Valorian genetics and advanced reproductive technology, envisioning a future where Kalara's size was not a curse, but a gift to be nurtured and celebrated. But their journey would not be without opposition. News of their alliance stirred the fears and prejudices of those bound to tradition. The Council dispatched emissaries to halt their work, insisting that Valoria's laws were absolute. Yet Kalara and Narek pressed forward, driven by the belief that life and love could not be confined by arbitrary limits. In the depths of her exile, Kalara found not just a companion in Narek, but the spark of hope that would ignite a revolution, one that challenged the very foundations of Valorian society and redefined the meaning of family and strength. As the twin suns set beyond the horizon, casting the world in hues of gold and crimson, Kalara stood on the precipice of change. Her story, once one of rejection and solitude, was becoming a saga of courage, defiance, and the unyielding power of choice. The galaxy beyond Valoria awaited, vast and unpredictable, but for the first time in her life, Kalara felt the promise of a future she could shape not alone, but with allies who dared to dream alongside her. Despite her exile, Kalara's spirit remained unbroken. The forests and cliffs that became her refuge were harsh and unforgiving, yet they mirrored the strength that defined her. The wind that whipped through the jagged peaks carried whispers of a world that refused to forget her, a world where ancient trees bent but did not break, where rivers carved paths through stone with patience and power. Each day she trained her body and mind, honing the skills that once made her a respected warrior among her people. Her immense size, once a mark of shame in the eyes of the council, was now her greatest asset against the wild predators and elemental forces that roamed Valoria's untamed regions. Yet the ache of loneliness was a constant companion, a hollow space where the hope of motherhood once blossomed. She watched other Valorians welcome their offspring into the world, their cries echoing through the cities, while she remained a silent sentinel on the edge of their lives. It was during one of these solitary nights beneath the tapestry of stars that fate intervened. A ship unlike any Kalara had ever seen descended from the heavens, its sleek lines cutting through the atmosphere with a grace that belied its size. The vessel landed silently in a clearing, its surface shimmering with adaptive camouflage that faded to reveal an emblem, a symbol of a distant civilization known for its scientific advancement and curiosity about the universe's mysteries. From the ship emerged Narek, a human scientist whose mission was to study biological anomalies and evolutionary wonders across the stars. His arrival was unexpected, and his presence stirred a ripple through the local ecosystem. Yet, unlike the Valorians who had shunned her, Narek's eyes held no fear or disdain. Instead, they sparkled with wonder and a deep-seated compassion that immediately bridged the gap between two vastly different worlds. Narek approached Kalara with cautious respect, aware of her size and the power she embodied. But it was her gaze that captured his attention, the resilience, the sorrow, and the unspoken longing that lay beneath her formidable exterior. Through days and nights spent in dialogue beneath the alien skies, a bond grew, a connection that transcended species, size, and culture. Narek shared knowledge of genetic engineering, reproductive science, and technology that could overcome barriers once thought insurmountable. He spoke not of replacement or denial of Kalara's nature, but of enhancement and possibility. Together, they dreamed of a future where she could fulfill her deepest desire to become a mother, to nurture life that carried the strength of Valoria's giants without fear of rejection. Their partnership was met with suspicion and outright hostility by the Valorian Council, who viewed Narek's influence as a dangerous corruption of tradition. Envoys were sent to dissuade Kalara, to sever the alliance and maintain the rigid social order. But Kalara stood firm, her conviction strengthened by Narek's unwavering support and the hope that bloomed in her heart. They began clandestine experiments in remote laboratories hidden deep within the wildlands, blending Valorian genetics with human innovation. Progress was slow and fraught with setbacks, but each step forward was a triumph against centuries of prejudice and fear. As word of their defiance spread, whispers of revolution stirred among the outcasts and those marginalized by Valoria's strict caste. Kalara became a symbol not just of strength, but of change. Her struggle inspired others to question the foundations of their society, to challenge the idea that greatness must be confined within narrow bounds. In the shadow of ancient temples and beneath the watchful eyes of towering idols, a movement grew, one fueled by the courage to embrace difference and the belief that the future belonged to those bold enough to reshape it. Through trials and triumphs, Kalara's journey was one of transformation not only of body, but of soul. The path to motherhood was neither easy nor certain, but with Narek's aid and her own indomitable will, she edged ever closer to realizing a dream once deemed impossible. And as the twin suns rose over Valoria's horizons, casting long shadows and golden light upon the land, Kalara knew that her story was no longer one of exile. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one where strength, love, and hope would carve a future worthy of the giants who walked beneath the stars. Chapter 2. The Scientist's Promise. The night sky over Valoria was a tapestry of swirling stars and twin moons casting a silvery glow over the rugged terrain. In the heart of the wildlands, where Kalara had carved out her sanctuary away from the judgmental eyes of the council, a fragile hope had begun to take root. The laboratory they had constructed was a fusion of ancient Valorian materials and Narek's advanced technology, a beacon of possibility hidden beneath the canopy of colossal trees and vibrant bioluminescent flora. Here, amid humming consoles and crystalline arrays, Kalara and Narek pushed the boundaries of science and tradition, their work a defiant whisper against the rigid doctrines that had condemned her. Narek's promise was simple yet profound, that with knowledge, compassion, and perseverance, they could overcome the barriers imposed by nature and society alike. Each day was a battle against uncertainty. The delicate dance of genetics, the fragile interplay of cellular replication and growth, demanded patience and precision. Narek approached the work with a reverence that matched Kalara's own fierce determination, treating each step as a sacred act of creation. They studied Valorian biology in meticulous detail, seeking to understand not just the mechanics, but the essence of life that coursed through her towering frame. The challenge was immense. Valorian gigantism was a marvel of evolution, a complex symphony of genes that ensured strength without sacrificing mobility or resilience. Yet the very traits that made Kalara formidable were the same ones that the Council feared might doom any offspring she bore. The risk of fatal complications, unmanageable size, and genetic instability loomed over every experiment, casting long shadows over their hopes. Narek was undeterred. He introduced innovations from his own world, nanobiotic matrices that could regulate cellular growth, adaptive gene sequencers capable of rewriting faulty code, and artificial wombs designed to support development beyond natural constraints. These technologies were alien to Valorian culture, yet in Narek's hands, they became tools of liberation rather than defiance. He believed not in replacing nature, but in guiding it toward a future where Kalara's dreams could flourish without fear. Their nights were spent in long conversations, where science merged with philosophy and hope, where the boundaries between two vastly different worlds blurred into shared purpose. Kalara learned not only about genes and cells, but about trust and the transformative power of partnership. However, the Council's shadow loomed ever larger. Reports of their work had seeped into the corridors of power, igniting outrage among the traditionalists who saw Kalara's quest as an affront to the sacred order. Envoys arrived under the guise of diplomacy, but carried ultimatums veiled in threats demands that she cease her experiments and return to the fold, to accept her exile as fate ordained. They spoke in measured tones, cloaked in the language of tradition and duty, warning that her defiance threatened not only her own standing, but the very fabric of Valorian society. To them, Kalara's ambition was hubris, a dangerous breach of laws written in blood and fire over millennia. They cautioned that tampering with the natural order could unleash catastrophes unseen, that her offspring, if any survived, might upset the delicate balance of power and survival on Valoria. The emissaries' words were cold and unwavering, echoing through the stone halls of the ancient temples that still dominated the capital. Their presence was a stark reminder of the isolation Kalara faced, the gulf between her dreams and the expectations of those who held sway over her world. Yet Kalara's resolve only hardened. She understood the stakes not just for herself, but for every outcast and dreamer relegated to the margins by rigid doctrines and fear. She refused to let the judgment of others dictate her destiny. With Narek's unwavering support, she met the emissaries not with submission but with reasoned defiance. She challenged their assumptions, demanding that they see beyond tradition and fear, to recognize the potential for evolution not only of biology, but of society itself. Her voice, deep and resonant, carried the weight of conviction as she spoke of hope, of a future where strength was measured not solely by size or bloodline, but by courage, compassion, and the willingness to embrace change. Back in their secluded lab, the tension between science and tradition fueled a fierce urgency. Kalara and Narek accelerated their research, driven by the knowledge that time was not on their side. Every breakthrough was hard-won, a gene sequence successfully rewritten, a prototype womb that could sustain embryonic development under conditions previously deemed impossible. They experimented with nanobots programmed to regulate growth, ensuring that the child would develop within safe physical parameters while preserving the innate vigor of Valorian genetics. Lasara, a psychic ally who had joined their cause, offered insights into the subtle energetic fields that influenced cellular processes, blending technology with ancient wisdom. Together, their work became a fusion of the past and the future, science and spirit, body and mind. But progress bred new dangers. The Council's covert agents sought to sabotage their efforts, infiltrating the wildlands to disrupt equipment, spread misinformation, and sow distrust among Kalara's few remaining allies. Rumors circulated that her experiments were unnatural, even blasphemous, inciting unrest among conservative factions. Despite these obstacles, the trio remained united, each a pillar of strength supporting the others in the face of mounting opposition. Kalara's determination inspired those around her, transforming her from an outcast into a symbol of resilience and hope. One pivotal evening, as the twin moons cast their pale light over the laboratory's crystalline walls, a breakthrough was achieved. The first embryo, a delicate spark of life imbued with the combined genius of Valorian and human science, was successfully implanted in an artificial womb designed to emulate the conditions necessary for healthy development. The moment was a triumph of love, science, and defiance, a testament to what could be achieved when boundaries were challenged and hearts were united. Kalara stood beside the incubation chamber, her immense hand gently resting on its surface as if to impart strength to the fragile life within. For the first time since her exile, hope blossomed like the vibrant flowers of Valoria's forests, bright, enduring, and full of promise. Yet the path ahead remained fraught with uncertainty. The embryo's growth would be closely monitored, and any complications could threaten not only the child's life, but the fragile truce between tradition and innovation. Kalara understood that their success would provoke further challenges, perhaps even open conflict with the Council's hardliners. But armed with love, knowledge, and unshakable faith, she was ready to face whatever trials lay ahead. For in this child, she saw the future, a future where rejection would give way to acceptance, where strength would be measured by courage, and where the bonds of family could transcend even the tallest of walls. Chapter 3: The Birth of Change. The dawn over Valoria was unlike any other. The twin suns rose slowly above the jagged peaks, their light filtering through the dense canopy of iridescent foliage, bathing the world in a golden glow that seemed to breathe new life into the ancient land. For Kalara, the morning carried a weight heavier than the stones beneath her feet, a mixture of hope, anxiety, and profound anticipation. The embryo, nurtured carefully through months of meticulous care and groundbreaking science, had reached a critical point. This was the moment where dreams and fears would collide, where the line between rejection and acceptance would be tested not by words or decrees, but by the miracle of life itself. The secluded laboratory hummed with quiet energy, instruments calibrated and guarded, as Kalara and Narek prepared for the most significant event of their journey. The air was thick with the scent of ionized crystals and blooming noctilucent flowers, a stark contrast to the sterile coldness of the machines that monitored the fragile life within the artificial womb. Narek's presence was steady and reassuring. His hands, skilled and gentle, moved with practiced precision, guiding the delicate process with a mixture of science and reverence. Over the months, he had become more than a scientist to Kalara. He was a partner in every sense, a beacon of hope who saw beyond the towering exterior to the heart that longed for motherhood. Lasara, too, was there, her psychic presence weaving a protective aura around the chamber, lending a subtle but profound energy that seemed to cradle the nascent life with warmth and safety. Together, they formed a triad of strength and love, defying the harsh dictates of a society that had once cast Kalara aside. The laboratory, once a place of experimentation and secrecy, now felt like a sanctuary, a womb of possibility where old prejudices were slowly being dissolved by the promise of new beginnings. As the labor began, Kalara's immense frame was a pillar of both power and vulnerability. The ancient traditions of Valoria had never accounted for a mother of her size, and yet, with the aid of technology and the unwavering support of her companions, she faced the unknown with courage. The birth process was a symphony of science and spirit, where advanced bioengineering met the primal rhythms of life. Narek's machines monitored every heartbeat, every cellular flourish, adapting to the unprecedented scale of the child growing within the artificial womb designed to accommodate the unique Valorian biology fused with human innovation. The room pulsed with life, a convergence of light and sound that transcended words. Outside, the wilds of Valoria held their breath, as if the very planet itself awaited the outcome of this monumental event. The moments stretched into hours, each second charged with tension and wonder. Kalara's breathing was steady, her mind focused, as memories of rejection and isolation battled with the overwhelming surge of love and anticipation. Lysara's psychic touch soothed the edges of pain and fear, her energy weaving a cocoon of calm that enveloped Kalara in a timeless embrace. Drakthar, having joined their cause as a fierce protector, stood watchful nearby, her presence a reminder of the strength that had carried Kalara through exile and hardship. The child's arrival was not just a personal triumph, but a defiant statement against centuries of exclusion and fear. When the first cry echoed from the chamber, a sound both fragile and fierce, it shattered the silence like a clarion call heralding a new era. The newborn was unlike any Valorian before, a perfect blend of her mother's towering heritage and the innovations that had made her birth possible. Her skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed softly with each breath, a vibrant testament to the fusion of old and new. She was both strong and delicate, a symbol of hope and change that could not be denied. As Kalara cradled her child for the first time, a flood of emotions surged through her: joy, relief, pride, and a fierce determination to protect this life against all odds. The world outside might still cling to outdated prejudices, but within these walls, a revolution had been born, a life that embodied the future of Valoria itself. News of the birth spread quickly, carried on the winds of change that swept through Valorian society. Reactions were mixed: shock, awe, disbelief, and cautious hope. The Council of Elders, confronted with undeniable proof that Kalara's size was no barrier to motherhood but a testament to resilience and innovation, found themselves forced to reconsider long-held beliefs. Debates ignited within the marble halls and stone circles, traditions challenged by the undeniable reality of life that could not be contained by fear. Allies rallied to Kalara's cause, while detractors bristled at the erosion of the social order. Yet the momentum of change was unstoppable. Valoria was awakening to a new dawn where strength was measured not just in stature, but in courage and love. For Kalara, Narek, Lysara, and Drakthar, the journey was far from over. Their victory was not only in the birth of a child, but in the breaking of chains that had bound generations. They would face new challenges: political intrigue, attempts to undermine their alliance, and the daunting task of raising a child who embodied both the legacy and the promise of their combined worlds. Yet together, they stood ready to meet the future with open hearts and unyielding spirit. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it was theirs to shape, not dictated by fear or exclusion, but by the boundless possibilities born from defiance and hope. Chapter 4: Legacy of Defiance and Hope. The world around Kalara had shifted in ways she could never have imagined. What had begun as exile and rejection had blossomed into a powerful testament to resilience, love, and transformation. The birth of her child, a beautiful fusion of Valorian strength and human innovation, had sent ripples through the foundations of their society, challenging ancient doctrines and awakening new conversations about what it meant to be whole, to belong, and to thrive. Yet, beneath the surface of this newfound hope lay a storm of uncertainty. The Council of Elders, custodians of tradition and power, had not relinquished their grip so easily. Factions within Valoria viewed Kalara's defiance as a threat to order, a dangerous precedent that could unravel the delicate fabric of their world. Political intrigue wove through the marble halls and shadowed groves, and enemies, once distant, crept ever closer. Kalara, Narek, Lasara, and Drakthar found themselves at the center of a maelstrom where love and loyalty were tested against ambition and fear. The council dispatched emissaries cloaked in diplomacy but armed with demands: surrender the child, abandon the experiments, and conform to the old ways or face exile, and perhaps worse. The trio's alliance became a beacon to those who sought change and a target to those who clung to the past. Secret meetings and whispered alliances formed beneath Valoria's towering citadels, with battles not just of weaponry, but of ideology. The laboratory where life had first been nurtured now stood as a fortress of hope, its walls echoing with the voices of those who believed in a future shaped by choice rather than fate. In the days that followed, Kalara's strength was tested in ways that transcended the physical. She became a symbol, a living embodiment of the courage to defy, to love, and to hope. The child grew, nurtured not just by science, but by the collective will of those who believed in her right to exist. Lasara's psychic gifts wove protective shields around the family, sensing threats before they materialized, while Drakthar's fierce vigilance ensured that no harm would come from the shadows. Narek's dedication never wavered, his mind tirelessly refining technologies and strategies to safeguard their fragile sanctuary. Together, they crafted a new legacy, one where the measure of worth was not confined by size, bloodline, or tradition, but by the strength of spirit and the power of love. Yet, the challenges were relentless. Political rivals and traditionalists mounted campaigns to discredit Kalara and her companions, using propaganda and intimidation to sway public opinion. Valorian society was torn between reverence for the past and the irresistible call of progress. Families debated in the plazas, warriors clashed in secret arenas, and the echoes of ancient laws battled the whispers of revolution. The council, faced with mounting unrest, convened an unprecedented gathering in assembly to decide the fate of Kalara, her child, and the very future of reproduction on Valoria. The stakes could not have been higher. The decision would reverberate not only through their world but across the stars, shaping alliances and destinies. On the day of the assembly, Kalara stood before the gathered elders and citizens, her presence commanding yet humble. She spoke not with anger or defiance alone, but with the wisdom born from hardship and hope. Her voice carried across the marble hall, a beacon of clarity and strength. She told her story not just of rejection, but of love, of the unyielding desire to nurture life against all odds. She spoke of the child growing strong within her care, a living testament to what could be achieved when fear was cast aside. Lasara and Drakthar stood with her, embodying the unity and diversity that Kalara championed. Together, they challenged the council to embrace a future where tradition was honored but not allowed to suffocate progress. The assembly was long and arduous, filled with heated debate and passionate pleas. When the final vote was cast, the outcome was a fragile victory, a recognition that change was inevitable, that Valoria's future depended on courage as much as tradition. Kalara and her companions were granted not just acceptance, but a mandate to lead a new chapter in their world's history. The ancient rites of reproduction were reimagined, inclusive and adaptable, honoring the strength and diversity of all Valorians. The child was celebrated as a symbol of hope, a beacon lighting the way toward a future where no one would be cast aside for being too big or different. As the sun set on that momentous day, Kalara held her child close, feeling the pulse of life and promise in her arms. The journey had been long and fraught with pain, but it was far from over. Together, with Narek, Lasara, and Drakthar, they would continue to face the challenges of a galaxy evolving beyond old fears. They would protect the fragile bonds forged in defiance and hope, shaping a legacy that would endure beyond the stars. In the vast expanse of the universe, Kalara had found not only motherhood but a family, a purpose, and a future bright with possibility. The days following the assembly's verdict unfolded like the turning pages of a sacred tome, each moment heavy with consequence and possibility. Valoria, a world once bound tightly by unyielding tradition, began to stir with the winds of change, tentative at first, like the fragile shoots of spring pushing through winter's thaw, yet growing stronger with every breath. Kalara, no longer the outcast but the mother of a new generation, felt the immense responsibility settle upon her broad shoulders. The child in her arms was more than a miracle of science and will, it was a living symbol of defiance against fear, a testament to the power of love to reshape worlds. Yet as celebration rippled through the cities and wildlands alike, Kalara and her companions knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges far greater than mere acceptance. The Council, while compelled to acknowledge the changing tide, harbored factions resistant to the loss of absolute control. These hardliners, steeped in the old ways and fearful of the unknown, plotted in shadows. Rumors swirled of secret meetings and alliances with external powers eager to exploit Valoria's internal strife. The very technology and knowledge that had brought Kalara's child into existence now made them targets for those who sought to harness or destroy what they could not control. Narek, Lasara, and Drakthar remained vigilant, their alliance now tested not only by political intrigue, but by the ever-present threat of violence and betrayal. The laboratory, once a sanctuary, transformed into a fortress, shielded by advanced defenses and the psychic veils woven by Lasara's subtle powers. Amidst this storm, Kalara embraced her role not just as a mother, but as a leader and protector. Her stature, once a cause for rejection, now commanded respect and awe. She traveled across Valoria, visiting cities and villages, speaking with elders and youth, sharing her story of hardship and hope. Each encounter was a thread weaving a new tapestry of understanding. Where once division had reigned, unity began to take root. Mothers who had doubted, warriors who had scorned, and scholars who had feared the unknown all found themselves moved by the tangible proof of what love and courage could achieve. The child, named Alaris, grew swiftly under the watchful eyes of those who loved her, a girl whose luminous skin and vibrant spirit were celebrated as the dawn of a new age. Yet, the challenges of leadership weighed heavily on Kalara. The fragile peace demanded constant vigilance, and every victory was shadowed by the possibility of retaliation. The Council's hardliners launched covert operations to undermine her influence, spreading fear and misinformation. Skirmishes erupted in border regions, testing the resolve of those who stood for change. Drakthar's combat prowess and strategic mind were indispensable, rallying defenders and striking swiftly against threats. Lasara's empathy and wisdom softened tensions, opening channels for dialogue and reconciliation. Narek, ever the visionary, worked tirelessly to advance medical and defensive technologies, ensuring that their community could withstand assaults on both body and spirit. One pivotal moment came when an alliance of traditionalist forces, backed by mercenary fleets and corporate interests from neighboring systems, mounted a coordinated attack aimed at capturing Alaris and dismantling the laboratory. The battle was fierce and unrelenting, a brutal test of everything Kalara and her companions had built. The skies above Valoria burned with the light of plasma and missiles, while the ground shook with the fury of clashing armies. Amidst the chaos, Kalara fought not just with strength, but with the unbreakable will of a mother protecting her child and her people. The defense held, a testament to the unity forged in the crucible of struggle and hope. In the aftermath, the galaxy took notice. Stories of Valoria's transformation, of a giantess mother defying fate and forging a new path, spread beyond its stars. Other worlds, burdened by their own prejudices and fears, looked to Kalara's example as a beacon. She became not just a leader of her people but a symbol across civilizations, a living proof that boundaries, whether of size, race, or tradition, could be overcome by courage and compassion. As years passed, Alaris blossomed into a figure of grace and power, embodying the best of her heritage and the promise of a future unshackled from old fears. Kalara watched with pride, her heart full not only of maternal love, but of profound fulfillment. The journey that began in exile and rejection had culminated in a legacy that would endure through generations, one where the measure of a being was not confined by arbitrary limits, but by the strength of their spirit and the love they bore. In the quiet moments beneath the twin moons of Valoria, Kalara often reflected on the path they had traveled. The world had tried to define her by size, to deny her the right to create life. But through defiance, partnership, and unyielding hope, she had rewritten her destiny and that of her people. Her story was a testament to all who had been cast aside, a call to rise beyond fear and embrace the boundless possibilities of change. The stars above Valoria shimmered with a new light, a light kindled by those brave enough to challenge fate and build a future where every life, no matter how big or different, was cherished and celebrated. Kalara's legacy was not just in the child she bore, but in the world she helped transform, a world where love triumphed over prejudice, and hope kindled the flames of a new dawn.